Hello, and welcome to Wisdom for the Aged.
No. Come on now. It's wisdom for menopause.
Wisdom for menopause
and beyond. Because we don't just stop when we've just done menopause.
And we're still in the shed. I just thought
we're still in the shed.
So we're going to talk about
that wonderful time.
Well, we talked at some point about why HRT wasn't necessarily a good starting point.
Yeah.
Because it's a change. And I really liked Alison's analogy of we're giving up a particular thing and going into a new place, like we're giving up coffee and going into post caffeine, for example. I wouldn't do that.
It could be.
You're going into you're giving up.
Do that,
But when you go through something, it causes some changes. But if it's something that suits you, then it's a really nice space to go into.
And it's interesting because I kind of feel it with like a lot of hormonal things. We can always imagine the bad things that are going to happen because of these hormonal things. So when you're pregnant, when all of that kind of hormonal stuff is going on, and always people are going to tell you about, you know, all the bad things that are going to happen to your body, and you're going to do this, that, and the other.
Whatever you do, don't do birth. Don't do birth.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
I couldn't believe it when I did it second, you know, when I was pregnant with my daughter and I went into the clinic and they had the pictures of like what happens at birth. I went, I'm sorry, I don't think I signed up for that.
No,
I want to be pregnant again and have another baby, but I don't want to do that.
No.
So we can always remember the bad things, and you can kind of imagine all the bad things about having children. You can imagine, you know, it's going to be this, that, and the other. You're never going to have a life, and you know, whatever those two things. But you don't remember any of the good things. So what people only talk about in terms of this, it feels like to me, is that, you know, when you get beyond all of that messy stuff, you know, if that's what you've done, then, you know, you're probably going to be a hag. Although we have a different view of hag, you'd have to say.
But it's a hag.
But you're going to be a hag. You're going to have lots of cats.
I've got lots of cats though. No, I've got 3. No. That was accidental. But
yeah, that's right. But it's like lots of cats. You're going to be an old crone. You're going to be miserable. You're never going to have sex again in the rest of your life. You know, all these kind of different things. And you're just going to be this wizened in the corner, just waiting until they come and take you out in a box, really. That's kind of, it feels to me that's what happens, which is why I think a lot of people are not really willing. They don't want to go through menopause because that's what they're going to get on the other end. We're here to tell you this is not the case.
No, it's a bit like we talk about it quite a bit, how powerful estrogen is and estradiol is, and these things that do run your body. And it is giving up a hormone or a drug. Well, it's not giving it up, but it's moving away from the way that it's working in your body to being less caught by its trappings.
Okay.
So it runs your cycle, runs your life, runs your emotions. It's sort of like a detox out of that into another way. And we do.
That's a great word. Why don't we just get rid of perimenopause? Just call it detox.
Detox away from estradiol.
Yeah.
And it's kind of then the body runs a different way.
Yeah.
And it runs in a new way. And that gives us much more creativity, because we're not
more energy.
Much more energy.
You're not spending all that time bleeding everyone.
Well, it's so huge. This powerful process of having a cycle, a reproductive cycle, is a huge process for the body. It absorbs a lot of energy.
It's really interesting. And I do remember having that kind of feeling when I got pregnant. It was quite a shock to me the first time, because having lived my life the way that I thought I wanted to live it, you know, I made choices about my career, I made, you know, different kind of things were kind of going on, and I felt like I'd been in charge of my life. And then suddenly my body was off doing its own thing.
Yeah. And
and I had no say in that. Whether I felt queasy, whether I threw up, whether I did this, that, and the other, where I couldn't go upstairs or not. And I was like a tenant in my body, while my body just did its own thing, which was grow the baby.
Yeah. So before we go through puberty, we have a lot of natural energy, a lot of ways of running our own body. Then it becomes kind of entrapped in these hormones. And I know it's a difficult one. I don't quite mean entrapped, but people say, oh, we're more than just hormonal creatures. And yes, we are, but they're very strong hormones that we're dealing with. It's very strong that once these hormones kick in, and we've got estrogen and progesterone, they're incredibly strong, and they do run us, and they run our needs and our creativity and our moods and how we relate to people. And then we kind of detox away from that a little bit.
Detox,
and then
rehab.
We can become ourselves again. We're less run by these things. We're run by different
and
things.
We kind of often talk about it's like going back to being a child, but with 40 years experience. I mean, how good is that? You know, well, you've actually got a checkbook or whatever that is.
Mean that you haven't had a great time with these hormones. I mean, I'm really not saying, oh, it's so awful, we're stuck under this. But it's like these hormones have given us this life, which has created an amazing experience. And we're lucky in that we now have a different experience without those waiting for us. So it's not detracting that we are weighed down and it's awful. That has given us a lovely 40 years. Now we're moving on.
And when you kind of think about that, so we talk about how the average age is about 52, but, you know, it could be younger.
Well, it's between 45 and 55,
45 and 55.
And that's the top of the bell curve.
So that's that. So when you're through that process, you've got another 30, 40 years
of living in a different way. Just in a different way.
So I was kind of looking at that and I'm thinking it's almost 20 years since I went through menopause. So that's a third of my life.
So instead of people thinking,
how good is that?
This is the time that you could be and don't give up and like find a hobby and join a walking club and all that. Actually, it is just you are naturally without these hormones that are running you. So you can choose something. So it actually feels a little bit unusual because you've come off something.
Yes.
Or you're not in a habit of doing something. And it's interesting. I always think that when people go, completely different subject, but people fast for 2 days, 3 days, something like that, they suddenly don't know what to do with the times where they would be cooking and eating. And they go, it's kind of 5 or 6 o'clock and you know, so actually it's the habit, the normal that you're interrupting. And there's a little bit of that goes with our cycle. It's this habit I normally do, I normally feel, I normally and then it's
this would be the time when I'm having, you know, premenstrual tension, but I don't seem to be having that anymore.
Or this is a time where I would feel great, and actually because I'm still transitioning, I don't feel good every day. I'm not sleeping as I do. So it's this change of habits that we just kind of adjust into and grow the other side of.
But it is like being the other side. It's kind of great.
It's good.
It's really good. So that's our experience, actually. Exactly doing that.
And you should too. And if you don't, this is the time to reach out and go, how do I do this?
How do I do that? I mean, I was lucky and I found things kind of happened in my life. Maybe it was that I was then more aware of, I was more prepared to do that. So like, for instance, the belly dancing came along in my 40s, and maybe it was that kind of thing. Yes, it kind of happened to me, but maybe if I'd been much more in the hormonal thing, I wouldn't have had enough, I wouldn't have thought I would do that or whatever it was. So I was, for whatever reason, prepared to do that. And then in my 50s, when I started putting on the art exhibitions with Rod, and now I kind of feel like, well, I've done that, did that for 10, 15 years, that was fine. But it was like, so that was great. But I'd never thought, and we just did that because apparently it was all my idea. Okay, I'll claim it. But we just had a conversation and I just said, well, why don't we just hire this art gallery and put on the show? And that's what we did. And people used to come into us and say things like, are you artists? You know, and I'm thinking, well, I've got an art O-level. But, you know, that's about it. But it was
more than me.
Yeah. But it was like, you know, and it was those kind of things to think, well, I have that space in my brain to actually kind of go, actually, we can, let's do this. I mean, I was working.
I think
more things can be.
It's
possible.
Just, your body's running on different things, and it's nice that it sort of lets you create that space. But it's hard when you've been in a habit for a long time. A bit like I'm fasting, but it's 5 and 6 o'clock, and I'm now walking around the kitchen thinking, what do I do?
Oh, I can have a glass of water.
Well, or you think, and then it gets to 7 and you think, it's okay, it's 7, I watch TV, I'm over it. But it's a lot of the time people find it's the habit of eating or the habit of that, which is, it's not the same analogy, but it's just that very noticeable. What would I do if, you know? And it's
so, and I kind of think, so it is like once you got beyond that and once you've gone through that transition. So I would say that, I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like if I just stopped it and decided not to do that. because I just feel so much better.
No, so it is your space to be you, but not just because people want to on social media to make you feel a bit better about it. It's just like, it really is. You're no longer under this. You've now got the freedom.
So it's that reclaiming of individualism, really.
Yes.
I can actually do this because I want to do it, not just because, oh bloody hell, I feel angry, I feel this, I feel whatever.
Yeah.
Because of whatever the hormones are doing in my body, because different things are happening.
Different things are happening. So it's a different time of life.
Yeah.
And it's a new type of life. And you are running on different chemicals, so it's going to feel different, which is exciting.
Which is kind of great, actually. Groovy.
Enjoy.